I'll pass this out. Everybody have one of these? All right.
And we're moving into Hillsdale versus.
Dr. Loder, are any of your students coming in or anything?
I invited them.
Okay, we'll see if somebody shows up.
We'll see if they pass the course, right?
All right.
But for the
Not sure how
company,
it gets.
when they can propose, next proposal, that we get something like that. If you know someone that has,
Okay.
that might be an interesting thing to put in this because it's very hard to come by. And it can be put with, like, information.
I'm not really sure how.
Why don't you say this?
Yeah.
No, did you already get one?
I have.
Yes, that's right. No, what does matter is, does it have exodus? Do you know the note that says? With, exodus, I don't know the chapter exactly, where, Tyndale says, the papal bull has killed more than Aaron's golden calf.
Yes, I am, and if you would like to, and here, talk.
So we're going to try to record and share this.
Oh, thanks for letting us bumble in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay, I wanted to share it as well. Yes, what I will probably do is if everything holds together, put it on YouTube. And then if Mike will get a link and I'll, that's good. There's a pathway.
Okay, guys.
Don't ask.
You know what, it's always the, it's like at the end of Casablanca, whoever the guy's name is, the French prefect or whatever, he says, gather up the usual suspects. It's always the usual suspects. It's the story in which one. And those pieces are really good. And I think there's things that everyone's had something. But we can do that.
Better need to go to the restaurant.
Really? That's almost blasphemy, only a third. That's absolutely true. And if there's a way with language that this is something that's done with whatever the preposition is, with the organization, what a great outlet for the organization, something that people are
What I was
participating
trying to mention is when
in,
you
joint
touch
ownership
the
of.
screen walls.
You're getting by without my checkbook. What do you
Yeah.
have there? Oh, you've got a little something.
Little box
It's a
of
Band-Aid case.
And wouldn't you know, he needs a Band-Aid right now.
Oh, do you need my checkbook back?
No,
we're good.
We're good. He held it in place while I got the Band-Aid out. I've been carrying that.
Did you get one of these yet?
Yes, I'm good. I've got
Did you get one
mine.
yet?
Head out that way.
You all right, Carl?
I've been carrying that box of Band-Aids around for months. Never needed one. And one time I'm using it for something else.
Well, yeah.
Other ones were there, are all
So it's
Does anybody know where Mike went?
lunch.
He went up and did.
Here he comes. Okay. So we just want somebody to introduce you here.
And all especially after lunch. That's right, Jason.
Thank you. You guys beat me. Thank you for being around. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Allan Loder. Dr. Loder is the Director of Online Education and is also an Associate Professor for Gateway. But he's been here about a year or so. But before that, he was an Instructional Design Specialist at the College of North Atlantic in Newfoundland, Canada. He's also served as adjunct faculty at Wycliffe College, the University of Toronto. Dr. Loder's interests include Matthew studies, synoptic gospel, rhetorical analysis, Second Temple Jewish literature, all these are my favorites too, New Testament textual criticism, Koine Greek lexicography, pneumatology, and hermeneutics. And this commitment to scholarship, just by that you can tell, is he's going to show us tonight with the vocabulary of the Greek New Testament. I'm looking forward to hearing it. So please join me welcoming Dr. Allan Loder.
It's a privilege to be here. I will try to project my voice. The Lord has blessed me with a weak voice, so I have to really speak up, and hopefully you can all hear me okay. I'm glad to see some of my Greek students came out today. That's good. So I want to tell you about a project that I've been working on for, well, I started in 2012, so what is that, 13 years? And it'll probably be, we're projecting it will come out in publication next year. So it'll be like 14 years from the time I started my activity. So this has been a bit of a life work. So I want to tell you about how I got started, what the process is, what the product is, and so on. And you being enthusiasts of the Bible, as I am, I think you'll see that this matters a lot. And this will affect Bible translations going forward, because we are just one step in a long process of God's work in the world. And so I think this will have a significant effect on some Bible translations to clarify some things a little bit maybe. So vocabulary of the Greek Testament, New Testament. Back in the early 2000s, I was doing PhD studies at the University of Toronto, Wycliffe College. And one of my professors there was this fellow, Dr. Bradley McLean. He became a bit of a mentor to me, and it all started when I did a course with him on Greek epigraphy and how it relates to the New Testament. And during the course, I learned about the field of epigraphy and the field of papyrology. The field of epigraphy is studying inscriptions, ancient inscriptions in Greek, that shows, gives us insight on how language worked in the ancient world, particularly the Greek language. And of course, this has a bearing on how we translate the Bible, the New Testament, which is written in Greek. And I also learned about papyrology. These fields, so papyrology is the study of papyrus, and you know probably about some papyri, because they're used there are lots of New Testament papyri that we use for translating the Bible as well. In fact, I have a facsimile here of P52. So I'm going to hand this around. You can have a look at this. This facsimile is actually on papyrus. And if you want to know what papyrus looks like or feels like, I'm going to hand a piece around. So this was the paper of the ancient world. This is where they wrote the Bible, they copied the Bible, and so on. And probably up to about the 5th, 6th century AD, this is one of the main writing materials. And so what I learned was the field of epigraphy started back in the 1500s and continues to today. And the field of papyrology, sort of as an official field, kind of began late early 1800s, but it really took off in the mid 1800s, and especially when they started discovering papyri in ancient Egypt. I don't know how many of you have heard of Oxyrhynchus and all those papyri. Well, this was a real thing going on back in the day. So we had scholars going around finding inscriptions and finding old papyri and recording this in books. When I was at the University of Toronto, I had the privilege of using Robarts Library regularly. Robarts Library is, I think, the second largest in North America, and they have all the volumes of these papyri and inscriptions that were copied into books, and there are volumes and volumes. And I was going in there, it was like a kid in a candy store, right? You're going and looking at all these papyri and inscriptions. Some of this would be things like receipts, personal letters, court transcripts, very fascinating stuff. You can read about how people communicated in the ancient world and record court transcripts and that kind of thing, and people having grievances against each other. So this was all put into these books. So you have this wealth of information, but what are we going to do with all that? So this is early 2000s. 2005, I left Wycliffe and took a position as an instructional design specialist at College of the North Atlantic in Eastern Canada. So now I'm working in a secular school, and I'm also teaching online at the University of Toronto, teaching New Testament. But around 2011, 2012, I wanted some way to keep up with my Greek, because I spent a lot of time learning Greek, and I wanted to keep it up. So I decided to challenge myself, and I became aware of this book, Vocabulary of the Greek Testament, by James Moulton and George Milligan. Now this was a project that started back in the early 1900s, or a little bit late 1800s. So there were two people involved, James Moulton and George Milligan. What they decided to do was take all this data that we have from the papyri and the inscriptions and make it into some kind of a lexicon. And they invited another person to join them, Gustav Adolf Deismann. He was a German scholar. So Moulton and Milligan are scholars from Great Britain. Deismann is a scholar from Germany, and the plan was that Moulton and Milligan would work on the papyri, and Deismann would focus on the inscriptions. But of course, this was 1911, they started the project. 1914, World War I started. And so they lost contact with Deismann. So Moulton and Milligan decided to carry on the project themselves, and we did for several years. But then in 1917, Moulton was on a ship crossing the English Channel when it was torpedoed by a German sub and sank, and he perished in the event. So this left Milligan. And Milligan continued to work on the lexicon for a few more years. The last edition that came out was 1930, and then in 1934, Milligan also died. And so the project was on hold. And it never got picked up again for decades, actually 9 decades before I picked it up. But during that time, I was able to find 10 different reprints of Moulton and Milligan's lexicon. So that should tell you that there's something significant about this, but it's a project that never got finished. And when you look at the sort of what we have in Moulton and Milligan's Vocabulary of the Greek Testament, you find that it's really incomplete. They don't have much of a bibliography, there's a whole bunch of stuff. So what I decided to do was take Moulton and Milligan's lexicon and expand on it and update it and actually finish the project that they started all those decades ago. And so for the last 13 years, this is what I've been doing. And I want to show you a little bit about the project. So the lexicon itself, when you look at it, one of the things you'll notice is that Moulton and Milligan presuppose that the readers would have a high level of knowledge of Greek. They just assume that you know how to read it or you know how to look up stuff, no problem. And so when you look at an entry in their lexicon, what you'll find is, so this is an example, and in the handout, I gave you here a couple of pages out of my new lexicon that I'm developing. So these passages that I will be talking about, or these words, entries in the lexicon, are actually in this handout. But you can look at that later. I'll explain it up here. That's free to read when you get home. So if you look at their lexicon, what you'll see is when you look at this, you'll notice there is no English gloss. You just have the Greek letter, and there's not much else there. You have, oops, so you have, there's a cross-reference to, it says, so this is Georgos, which is farmer or tenant farmer, and Georeo is to farm. And so what they give you is, if you look at it, you just see that there's a few words, and there's not much else. There's some references to some ancient sources, but this is all they have on this particular word. So what I did was, I decided to go ahead and expand on this and complete the work. So I want to tell you what I've taken. I've taken the entries similar to all the entries in Moulton and Milligan, and what I did with them. So first of all, I included the lexical form, which they have, but I also keyed the entire lexicon to the Strong's numbers. So if you don't have a good knowledge of Greek, or maybe you don't know Greek much at all, you can still use the Strong's numbers to access the information here. Next, I gave all of the words in the lexicon, not just the headers, but every word in the body of the text as well. It's transliterated. So if you don't know Greek, you can still kind of function with the lexicon. Then I added an English gloss. Now an English gloss is not a definition. It's just a gloss, a word to kind of give you an idea what the word is about. But of course we know that words exist in context, and it's the context that helps you define what the word means. So that's a good start. And then I included the cross-references they had, but I also included lots and lots of cross-references myself as well in the body of the text. Next, so if you look at their entry for the Orgos, you'll notice that they do give some references to inscriptions here. You see underlined in red. These are references of inscriptions. Now, if you don't know about epigraphy and papyrology, this is probably not going to make a whole lot of sense to you. So if you're a pastor out in Wyoming, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and you're pastoring a church and you want to use this lexicon, this is probably not going to be very helpful for you. So I'm keeping the person on the ground doing ministry in mind when I'm creating this lexicon. So what I did was I included all of the Greek text that Moulton and Milligan had included in their lexicon. And so I had to actually look up every single reference in this. And I was able to add in all the Greek text. Sometimes this involved, if I found it electronically, I could kind of snip out a bit and put in here. Sometimes I was actually transcribing it myself electronically because I had a physical book and that was it. So I did all of this. Next, I included English translation. So if you look at the original entry here, you'll see the only thing to translate in this is one word, undertaken. Everything else is left to you to be able to read intelligently and be able to read the Greek, or be able to go and look up these references. And of course, unless you have access to this, it's going to be impossible. So what I did was I put an inline translation for every single Greek excerpt in the lexicon. There are over, we did a count, there are over 20,000 inline translations. So yes, I've translated a bit of Greek, am I right? Yeah. What I did then was I bolded the word in the Greek sentence and the word in the English translation to show you, if you know Greek, you can read the sentence in Greek. If you don't know Greek, you can still read the sentence in English, and you can see how the word functions within context. So rather than writing out a whole definition, you can go to other lexicons for that. Now you have a library where you can go to and see the actual references and how the word was used in the ancient Greco-Roman world at the time the New Testament was written. So this is more of a library as well as a reference work. Next, I included the date and location of the sources that Moulton and Milligan recognizes representing the word. So I give a definition, and so what I do, I was able to track down sources, and I limited myself to around 200 BC to about 300 or 400 AD. So I tried to stay within that time frame in order to that the word would reflect how it would have been used in the New Testament. Then I added catalog identifiers. One of the problems I would know if you're dealing with inscriptions or papyri is, remember all those books I was talking about in the library? Well, you could have the same inscription showing up in 3 or 4 or 5 different books. And so Moulton and Millikan gave one catalog identifier, but I was able to find where else that text could be found, and I included it in square brackets after the initial identifier. So you can find the text easier if you want to read the whole thing in context. For those into this sort of thing, like I am. So then, I also have an extensive bunch of footnotes and glossary items. So if you notice here, in this particular excerpt, there are a couple of words that you may not have ever heard of before. Epimelites and amphrodogrammatus. Can anybody tell me what that is? Right? You probably wouldn't know. So what I did was I looked up all these strange words. There are thousands of these. And I provided a footnote giving a little definition at the bottom of each entry. And so now, if you're unfamiliar with the term, you can just quickly look down to the footnote and see what it's about. Then there are other places in Moulton and Millikan where, say for example, you're doing a sermon on the passage with the where Jesus turns water into wine in Cana. So you want to look up Cana in the lexicon. Well, if you go to Moulton and Millikan's lexicon, what you'll see for that entry is that's it. You get Cana written in Greek, so there's no gloss or anything. And it says, see Berket Syriac forms, page 18 forward and page 22. Well, unless you're able to find Berket and Syriac forms, which is probably going to be a little bit of a challenge for most people, this would be of no use to you. What I did was I went to Berket's book and I snipped out the parts that they're referring to and provided in the appendix at the end of the glossary entry. So at the end of each letter, so you got all the things for like gamma and this or kappa here. At the end of that entry, there are a whole lot of entries like that. So the actual text that they're referring to is actually in the lexicon. So it puts it right in. Now, if there's stuff you can find, I didn't bother to put it in. But stuff that's difficult to find, I actually put it in the lexicon. So it's there for you to use. So lexical updates. I have, so Moulton and Millikan never finished their work. They were short by 934 lexical entries, which I completed the whole thing now. So for the other 900 odd, I actually did the same kind of work with those from scratch. So one of the things that came across with lexical updates is this. This is an example. There are several. But in BDAG, that's the sort of the standard lexicon that we use today. They have an entry there for methodia. So methodia is a word that in the Bible means scheming or craftiness. But generally the word just means a method, the way of doing something. So what Bauer BDAG says is that methodia, and you notice what it says here. They give the sources where that word is found in ancient manuscripts or ancient papyri, and they say it's though only in late papyri, 421 and later, and in the sense of method. And you notice at the bottom they have this MM. What they're telling us there, MM is abbreviation for Moulton and Millikan's Greek vocabulary. And so what they're doing is using Moulton and Millikan as a source in order to do their lexical entry for this word. So I went to Moulton and Milligan, and what I find there is that they are correcting Thayer. So Thayer's lexicon, which you're familiar with, Thayer says that it occurs neither in Old Testament nor in profane authors. That means authors that are not in the Bible or church, within the ecclesia. And they also say that late papyri in more primary sense of method, and they give these entries. Now these are the same lexical entry, or the same sources that BDAG gives. And so what they do is they've taken what Moulton and Milligan did and reproduce it in their lexicon. This is not this is no problem, it's, I'm not criticizing what they did, because it's easy to miss something, but I did find an inscription from the Roman imperial period. So that could be anywhere from 47 BC to the 425 AD. So in the Roman imperial period, I found this inscription, and I won't read the Greek, I'll just read the English. This is an epitaph, so it's somebody's gravestone, and what the man is saying is that his kids they're not allowed to sell the sarcophagus. So none of my children, nor their descendants, are permitted to sell the sarcophagus or to vault below the sarcophagus to anyone under any pretense or scheming. Otherwise, he shall pay to the treasury 2,500 denarii. So there was a fine for selling your father's sarcophagus. But the idea here, though, is that the context this is a little snippet of a much larger inscription, but the context clearly shows the word methodia used in the sense of scheming, and is not late papyri. It's earlier inscription. So I was able to go through and find quite a few places like this that updates the lexical information. So I imagine when BDAG gets edited again or revised again, maybe this one will be included. But it's in mine now. So this is what I got in Methodia now. It's quite a bit more than what you saw in Moulton and Milligan or in BDAG. And I do a little excerpt there, including the new inscription that I found, and just a little note about BDAG, sort of correcting that. So now comes to the so what. Why would, where does the rubber hit the road kind of thing? Why would we need another lexicon? We have lots of lexicons out there. This one is different, obviously, but what is the so what? What does it affect? So I use one word to give you an example of how this lexicon may affect Bible translations going forward. We're going to look at the word gunai. Gunai is the vocative of the word gune, which means woman. So it's when you're addressing somebody, woman. It's a vocative. So Jesus uses this word 10 times in the New Testament. It's the Canaanite woman, sick woman, the Samaritan woman at the well, the woman caught in adultery, Mary Magdalene at the resurrection, and he even calls his mother twice. He addresses her as a woman. Woman, what does that to me or you? And then Peter and Paul both use it once each. So Raymond Brown says in his commentary on the Gospel of John that woman is an entirely unhappy translation, an unpleasant tone when it is used as an address. I mean, when you read your Bible and Jesus is addressing his mother and he calls her just woman, it does not sound very nice. It sounds kind of a little bit rude to us in the Western world, at least. So the question is, how do we take a word like gunai, which is an addressing a woman as woman, and how do we translate it into English that best brings over the thought, how the intent of the word, not just the wooden translation of it. So one of the cardinal rules of exegesis that the interpreter must always approach and analyze a text is in part or in whole within context. So we have to look at the historical, cultural, geographical, ecclesial, ideological, and literary context. This is from Randolph Tate in his book Biblical Interpretation, an Integrated Approach. So what he's telling us there is that context is extremely important for understanding words. And so, have you ever thought about how Greek grammars and lexicons are made? We do not write the rules of Greek grammar. I keep telling my Greek class this because there's things I wish they didn't do. It's a little hard for us to wrap our heads around. But the way Greek grammars are made and the way lexicons are made is through observation. That is, we're not writing the rules of the language. We're going back and we're observing how the language was used in ancient times. And so lexicons and grammars are descriptive, not prescriptive. So we're just going back, noticing how they used the language, and just describing to someone how they were used. And the same thing in word meanings and lexicons. We're just describing how the word was used. So I went looking for gunai in the papyri and the inscriptions. And so I did find 3,316 occurrences of the word gune, which is the nominative form of woman, but I was able to find no example of the vocative of gunai in all those sources, not once. And that might not be surprising because gunai would be a word you probably would expect to find maybe in narrative or something like that, where somebody's actually conversing with each other. But I did find it 3 times in the inscriptions. So I did find gunai used. And when I'm looking at data on how the word was used, I kept these 2 things in mind. Date. Is it a source around the time of the New Testament? And also geographical distribution. So is the word used the same way in several different places? And that would give us a good indication of how we should be translating the word gunai. So I went through and I found, so this is the first of the 3. This is from Paros, is an island in the Aegean Sea. So it's, if you can imagine the Mediterranean, Mykonos is kind of in the middle, and just south of Mykonos you have the island of Paros. And so you're right in the middle, the whole thing. And here we found this inscription. It's in Doric dialect, so it's a little bit of a dialect. But here it's again on a headstone, and it's this: "Who has put you here, dear woman, under the Prian ground? Who has adorned this splendid monument above your tomb?" And then it goes on down. There's a whole lot to it. I just snipped out a couple of lines here. Line 9 says, "Farewell, dear woman, you descended from such kinsmen." So there's a hint of a term of endearment here, as they're talking about the beloved deceased woman. So the next one I found is in Attica. That's around modern-day Athens. And this is a mix of Attic and Epic dialect. So I don't want to get into the Greek here, but it is not totally Koine Greek, but it does give you. So this is the first, or the 2nd to the 3rd century. The other one was 1st century. So 2nd to 1st century, we're still kind of around the time. And here is also a epitaph. "Dear divine woman, your glory," or it could be translated renown, "will never be forgotten on earth. You live forever, and your name is undefiled. Indeed, may time never boast of destroying your life." So here it's a term of endearment for it. So she's divine, dear woman. Your glory will not be renowned. And then finally, this one is from Pergamon. This is modern-day Turkey area. This is in the Epic dialect. This is Roman imperial period, so around the time or shortly after the New Testament. And this is an epitaph written, it seems to be written by a woman's husband to his dearly departed wife who had just passed away. And he says this about her: "Farewell, Panthea, dear woman," or maybe dear wife, gone from your husband, gone far from your husband, who after your tragic destiny bears the endless mourning of your death." So you can almost feel the sense of endearment and missing his wife. And so I think based on these 3 examples, I think just to translate gunai, just woman, doesn't quite do it. There's a little bit of there's a hint of endearment there when you say woman. So I think we should be translating this word dear woman, not just woman. And so that would be something I would bring into the lexicon to point that out. So that's just a so what example of why this matters. So 937 new lexical entries. There's an extensive glossary of terms at the back. There are, I think, 111 terms with definitions. There's definitions about kinds of money, like money, official titles, and that kind of thing. There's an extensive bibliography. Right now, looks like there's going to be around 200 pages of bibliography alone. Just because you got those catalog numbers, well, they mean a book somewhere. So I had to take that catalog number, find a book, find the inscription, and then record in the bibliography where they were found. So now when you see that, you can actually go and look up those inscriptions for yourself. It's also accessible. So everything is keyed to Strong's, cross-references, everything transliterated, inline translations. So the word count, I do a word count for the publisher, is 1,300,000 words. So this is a 1949 reprint of Moulton and Milligan, to give you an idea of the size. I think my update is going to be about twice the thickness of this. So it's in Word document, double-spaced Word document is 4,500 pages. So it's going to work 13 years now. So Hendrickson Publishers, we're typesetting everything. We're about 80% through. We're aiming for 2026 to publish it. Maybe 2027, depends on what's happening. And if I don't go out of my mind before then, you'll have a book coming out next year. So anyway, that is my new lexicon that I'm coming up with. So any questions or anything?
Well, first, thank you.
Yeah.
So how did you pick that range as far as the years that you, I'm assuming, determined that word probably maintained that meaning over that period of time?
So language evolves, and one of the things that happens with language is that words will expand on meaning, and sometimes they'll just stay with the one meaning, and the others sort of stay by the wayside. What I found was before the 2nd century BC, you're getting into really strange dialect and stuff. And this was now, you're getting into maybe 3rd century, you're getting into before Alexander the Great. So it's not Koine Greek anymore, and you have different dialects. So we talked about Epic and Doric and Attic, different dialects. And so these were dialects of Greek that existed independently, pretty much. And it wasn't until Alexander the Great that they sort of got put into one dialect, in what we call Koine Greek. And so going before Alexander the Great, I thought maybe not all that helpful, but there is carryover, of course, into Koine Greek. And then for the other side, you have the influence of church history and stuff, and that tended to change the meaning of Greek texts, the Greek words a bit. Some of them were more theologically infused with meaning that may not have meant that in the 1st century, so I kind of cut it off. There are cases when I go as late as the 6th century because there are no examples till then, but I do highlight that or mention that in the lexicon. So I tried to keep it, because what I'm after is what did the word mean in the Greek New Testament? And so to go beyond that either way, I figured is probably not a fair representation. So I tried, if I could get something in the 1st century, I favored that more so, or just before the 1st century.
Excuse me? Whatever happened to Horsley's project on new documents illustrating the Greek, I think it was the Greek New Testament or something, the multi-volume Macari.
It was 10 volumes. I don't know. It kind of went off the rails, I think. I don't know the full story, but I think there may have been a little bit of conflict in the team and stuff.
It's a great resource.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But it's not something you can just pull off the shelf as a handbook kind of
Right,
thing. It's
right.
it's very expensive.
Right.
But they don't even, I think it's out of print now even.
Probably is.
Yeah. One of the fellows that worked on the project, I did contact him about my idea and stuff. He didn't like my idea at all.
Really?
Because he said, well, what he had the problem about was the fact that there's a gloss there. Because you could give the impression that the gloss is the meaning of the word. That wasn't my intent at all. And I do say that in the preface of my, and I also have a little snippet in my preface to Greek students and users of Greek that be careful, because just because a word meant something in the 2nd century BC in Roman Egypt does not mean that Paul meant the same thing by it when he writes the book of Romans. So you have to be careful. You have to look at words in context. But I think without a gloss, a lexicon kind of loses its usefulness a little bit, because you kind of need the basic idea of what the word is, and then use the other inline translations to give a sense of what the word means in context. But yeah, so I don't know what happened to that project for sure.
Be careful not to be on any ship transatlantic bound.
During the war.
Yeah, during the war.
Yes. So what I'm doing is finishing a project that started in 1911. And we'll get it done in 2026.
Wow.
So, for the seminary student or professor doing research, of course, it's gonna be spending. And so I'm just thinking ahead with you that as soon as we can get you connected with Logos, that's that's where all the royalties come in. I mean, they gotta buy Logos, they gotta buy your book.
That's
So I'm just, we can talk later, but that's been a money maker for me. So they go in my books and it's out of print, but I get a royalty check.
We have been in conversation with Logos, and
Great.
Concordance has actually approached me.
Aha,
Yeah,
oh,
so-
concordance.
Concordance.
So you're in competition now, so.
They'll probably get both, they'll probably
Okay,
get.
both of
But
them.
it will be through Hendrickson, right?
Yeah, through Hendrickson's
Yeah.
publisher.
Yeah.
Great, that's good. That's really,
Yeah, so it will be in electronic format soon, but it's so big, it's gonna take a while to get
Yeah.
there. It's a big project.
it's an important, I mean, it really is. It really is correcting BDAG. Who can ever say you correct BDAG? You're gonna be correcting
It was a fluke,
BDAG.
it was a fluke, I found that,
Yeah.
because I'm searching, sometimes in books, looking at indexes, sometimes databases, electronic databases. When I started this, I didn't have access to very much online at all. Now, it's all online now. But when I started this, I actually had to go physically looking for a book, or I bought a CD with some inscriptions on it from the Packard Humanities Institute. Now they have all the stuff online, but I paid dearly for it. Yeah, back in the day. But that's what I do. I search databases, but you just can't search the word in the lexical form. You have to then turn it into different forms. If it's in the or in the nominative, then I got to search for accusative plural, and so I'm looking for all that, and that takes thousands and thousands of hours of doing this. I don't know. I've spent an entire morning just translating a little text because I just couldn't figure it out. Oh, also, you know, in the appendix where I have done excerpts of sources that probably are hard to find now, what I've done there, if the source is in Latin, German, Italian, I've translated those into English. So all that is in English. Everything is, so the Hebrew is transliterated as well, so is the Syriac that's in there. It's all got all transliteration. So the idea is to make it as accessible as I possibly can to just the average pastor, and I don't care if I make any money on this. I really don't care.
Your great grandchildren may, because it's gonna take a while.
Yeah. but I, right now, if I sold the book for $100, I'd probably make .00001 cent an hour. It's been so long doing this. It's been, so I worked at it for about 10 years pretty regularly, and then a little bit of time in between. I did a PhD dissertation and stuff like that, and went on hold for a little bit. So, but even then, every now and then I would go and just sit down and work on it. It's been intense. It's been a long project. So, yeah.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you, Dr. Loder. So, all right, we're doing well on time, so we got about a 15-minute break, and we want to get back again before 4 so that Dr. Kate will be ready to go at 4 o'clock.
Mike,
So,
I can make just
yeah.
a quick comment on the dinner. It's Friday night. It's last minute trying to get reservations. We cannot get a group of 14 or whatever. But we can go and kind of get in line and see if we get 4 to 6 people at a table and so on. My recommendation is as soon as we're done at